Many free countries have lost their liberty, and ours may lose hers. But if she shall, be it my proudest plume, not that I was the last to desert, but that I never deserted her. I know that the great volcano at Washington, aroused and directed by the evil spirit that reigns there, is belching forth the lava of political corruption in a current broad and deep, which is sweeping with frightful velocity over the whole length and breadth of the land, bidding fair to leave unscathed no green spot or living thing, while on its bosom are riding, like demons on the waves of hell, the imps of that evil spirit, and fiendishly taunting all those who dare resist its destroying course with the hopelessness of their effort. And, knowing this, I cannot deny that all may be swept away. Broken by it I, too, may be. Bow to it I never will. The probability that we may fall in the struggle ought not deter us from the support of a cause we believe to be just. It shall not deter me. If I ever feel the soul within me elevate and expand to those dimensions not wholly unworthy of its almighty architect, it is when I contemplate the cause of my country deserted by all the world beside, and I, standing up boldly and alone, and hurling defiance at her victorious oppressors. Here, without contemplating consequences, before high heaven, and in the face of the world, I swear eternal fidelity to the just cause, as I deem it, of the land of my life, my liberty, and my love. And who that thinks with me will not fearlessly adopt the oath that I take? Let none falter who thinks he is right, and we may succeed. But if, after all, we shall fail, be it so. We still have the proud consolation of saying to our consciences, and to the departed shade of our country's freedom, that the cause approved of our judgment, and adored of our hearts, in disaster, in chains, in torture, in death, we never faltered in defending.
The most important institution of the United States, the institution of the presidency, is a benchmark in a long struggle for freedom against a financial oligarchical rule over mankind, a financial oligarchy currently wearing a British mask. In 1763, this British Empire was established. The Treaty of Paris turned a private company, the British East India Company, into a power greater than King George or any other monarch of the British Isles. As this crisis developed, Republican forces around Benjamin Franklin knew that they were no longer a colony of a nation-state, but were now under the jurisdiction of a new Venetian empire. Further, they knew that this new form of oligarchy posed a deadly threat to any aspiration to Republican self-governance. They decided to break with Britain, touching off a fight over the dignity and rights of man, a fight which continues today. In breaking with the empire, the Founding Fathers created the Constitution of the United States of America, which is the highest expression of statecraft in the history of man. The idea of a republic goes back to Solon of Athens, was expanded by Plato through the mouth of Socrates, was developed through Nicholas of Cusa, the Council of Florence, and the establishment of the sovereign nation-states in France under Louis XI and England under Henry VII. Consciously building upon this rich history, the Founding Fathers founded the constitutional presidency, a presidency that spells doom not just to the British Empire of today, but to all empire. The British Empire fought back, assassinating presidents Lincoln, McKinley, and JFK, used financial warfare, cultural warfare, and anything else they could throw at us, including assets like George Soros, Al Gore. And it takes a lot to throw around Al Gore. Despite all of this, the Constitution still stands. And more importantly, the institution of the presidency of the United States still stands. By historical standards, many, if not most of the men who have become president were not very presidential. Most were incompetent. In some cases, their policies were tantamount to treason. Some were downright British agents, turncoats. But the United States survived because the institution of the presidency has a power in preserving a continuity of leadership beyond any particular presidential term. This really freaks out the British Empire, because governments under parliamentary systems are easily manipulated and dissolved by the British, while the United States has maintained a continuity of government throughout its entire existence. The institution of the presidency is more than just the appointed cabinet. Retired diplomats, intelligence officials, military, former presidents, independent citizens, scientists, professionals representing all the political classes of the United States. This network, this team of seasoned veterans, is an expression of Republican self-government. These are not just advisors to the president. The fight that takes place amongst this group tends to define policy initiatives of the executive branch. And in an existential crisis like the world faces today, this institution is absolutely indispensable. Let's take the case of the presidency in action. Take the case of the Cold War. The plan at the time was called Mutually Assured Destruction, Operation Kill Everything. The Soviet Union was working towards a first strike capability against the United States. President Reagan brought Lyndon LaRouche into discussions around the White House as the only voice of reason against the mutual and assured destruction doctrine. In March 1983, Reagan publicly adopted LaRouche's plan, calling it the Strategic Defense Initiative. Despite the actions of members of Reagan's own cabinet, such as James Baker III, who tried to block LaRouche out, LaRouche led the back-channel negotiations between Reagan and the Soviet Union. This institution is the only way to understand Bush's behavior when he met with Putin at Kennebunkport last year. Bush proposed cooperation with Russia on strategic missile defense. Do you honestly think that was his own idea? Not possible. He may have memorized the speech, but he certainly didn't understand what he was saying. This is probably the most amazing example of the institution of the presidency in action. One reason that the deal fell through is Dick Cheney, a thug for his wife, a virtual British agent. Another reason is that George W. Bush is an incompetent and a boob. In the upcoming November 15th G20 conference, Bush said that the president-elect is not invited. This is a strategic blunder, and somebody should shut that guy up, which is also the role of the institution of the presidency. In all seriousness, French bankers are predicting that in the press that there will be a total financial collapse in the Monday after this conference. The way they figure, nothing substantial will come out of the conference, no policy agreement, no solution to the financial crisis which is racking the world as a whole. That outcome is not set in stone, but at this point it doesn't seem like anyone is going to stand up to take the leadership required to come to a principled agreement, besides Lyndon LaRouche, for fear of death. It's a very real question as to whether we will be able to keep the president-elect alive long enough even to attend this conference. The destabilization and chaos that an assassination would create in the United States fits the mode of operations of the British Empire, given that the president-elect, Obama, may not have what it takes to implement the fascist dictatorship they now require. We saw how the British used this threat to prevent a President Clinton from coming onto the stage at this moment of history. We've had an election, and Barack Obama has won the popular vote. Yet, in the midst of the greatest economic meltdown in the history of man, there's no real president in sight, and the inauguration is still a long way off. While it would be preferred to have a free and independent American president, we do have the United States presidency, and Lyndon LaRouche is calling upon this institution to stand up and kick against the pricks and destroy the British Empire for once and for all. The nation, the world, and all of history requires this now. Without this, civilization is doomed.